Welcome or welcome back to Therapy Explained, where we explain, demystify, and destigmatize mental health and mental health treatment. My name is Deniss. I'm a licensed therapist, mental health speaker, and advocate, and your host here at Therapy Explained. Today, I'm going to try to help you develop a roadmap for creating a whole year of inner child healing. These are 5 different areas which I would encourage you to try to dive into, learn more about, and get comfortable with to help you in that journey. Of course, by no means is this meant to be a list that you check off so that at the end everything's healed and you're good to go. These are just things that I would like to bring your attention to, and again, encourage you to be more curious about and more gentle with. As always, before we dive into today's conversation, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you find it useful or if you feel that you learned something at any point throughout. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can get more videos on mental health just like this one. And of course, don't forget to follow me on all socials so we can continue today's conversation. As a note, I'm also going to be sharing different journal prompts that I think would be really helpful for you in each of these areas. So grab a pen and paper if you would like to write them down, but you can also sign up for my newsletter so that you can get them emailed directly to your inbox. Without further ado, let's get to it. Understand and address generational trauma. We are starting with a big one. This one, just like the rest, as you'll notice, will be journeys all within themselves. So yes, generational trauma is a big one, but I think this is a really big area for you to look at. It will be really beneficial for you to understand how the previous generation's experiences have affected the way that they see the world, the lessons that they pass down, the values that they pass down to your grandparents, your parents, and now to you. The reason this is so important is because it's helpful for us to understand how our worldview was shaped to begin with and how larger systems have played a role in that and how they continue to do so now. This will also give you the opportunity to decide what things you want to continue and what things you want to end. So your journaling prompt for this area of inner child healing is going to be to reflect on the stories of your parents and grandparents, whatever you know about their story. Where did they grow up? What were their parents like? What did they do for a living? How many kids did they have? Do you know how they met their spouses? Do you know how they chose to have kids? Was it a choice to have kids? All of that stuff. If you know it, write it down, reflect on it, and try to see if you can connect the dots about how this may have shaped their worldview, their expectations of the world, the opportunities that they had. And if you don't know much about their stories, I would encourage you to ask about them. If you feel safe enough to do so, of course. Some of us may not feel comfortable asking these questions of our parents or grandparents, but if you can, I highly encourage you to do so. You can also ask questions of your aunts, of your cousins to see what anybody else in your family knows about those stories. Number 2 is addressing your mother and father wounds. In line with understanding generational trauma and how past experiences of previous generations have affected you now, let's talk about the closest generation to you, which is going to be your parents. We've talked about this in previous videos as well, but the relationship that you have with your parents is very important. They're the first relationships that you have. You come into the world and boom, automatically you have those relationships. Whether or not those parents were actually physically a part of your family and of your life, that is going to inform how you see the world. The reason this is so important is because it shapes what you expect of other people. It shapes your definition of love. It shapes your expectations of whether or not you should expect safety, care, affection, concern from other people. Knowing how these relationships are affecting you will also help you learn what it is that you need in order to heal some of these wounds that were left behind. Now, I know that this can be, again, a very tricky area for some of us, a really painful area for some of us, so take it slow. Your journaling prompt for this section of inner child healing is going to be to reflect on your relationships with your parents. So how affectionate were your parents when you were growing up? Did they say, I love you? Did they say, I'm proud of you? And also think about how you have come to expect that, or maybe not, from other people. Are you comfortable with affection? Are you comfortable saying, I love you? How close are you able to get to people or allow people to get to you? This, of course, goes in line with attachment styles and how secure you may or may not feel in romantic relationships as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in today's video, but also in other videos that I have planned for us this year. Number three, understand your inner child in the workplace. You may or may not be surprised to learn that our workplaces, the culture and the dynamic at work, will often mimic the dynamic that we have with our family. If you are, for example, someone who tends to take care of other people, pick up jobs from other people, then that's probably who you will be both at home and at work. Right? You might have issues with a parent and want to please them and feel that you really want them to be proud of you and think highly of you. That might show up for you at work. You might feel that with your manager, with your boss, with somebody also at work, usually someone with a lot more power at work than you, or maybe you don't like authority because that might be connected to you pushing away from your parents and not wanting them to have authority over you. So, do you get where I'm going with this? This is really important. Understanding how your inner child responds to stress, to unhappiness, disappointment, all the uncomfortable feelings while you're at work will be helpful to battle anything like imposter syndrome or burnout. Understanding yourself is such a valuable skill to have. So, this is yet another area of inner child healing that I think will serve you really well, especially if you're a driven person. Your journal prompt for this area of inner child healing is to reflect on what your parents told you about what they expected of you in terms of your profession. Did they encourage you to go to school? Did they encourage you to pick up a certain hobby or interest or career? Think about what messages you received that were not just explicit. So maybe if you reflect on your childhood, your parents might have said, I want you to be a doctor, I want you to be a lawyer, I want you to be a teacher, or maybe they expected you to do whatever they were doing in their career very explicitly. But sometimes this is also done in more implicit ways and more subtle ways. Your parents may be signing you up for tutoring or kind of pushing you towards certain hobbies or interests, or the other way, right? Not encouraging you to go to school, not having conversations with you about college. So reflect on what that looked like and then connect it to how that may be shaping how you expect yourself to navigate career, right? If your parents expected you to go to school and you didn't, how do you think that those two kind of things interact with each other? Or the opposite, right? If they didn't want you to go to school and you did, how does that affect the way that you feel about yourself? Number four is understanding who you are in romantic and platonic relationships. Now, this is, of course, very strongly connected to your attachment style and your relationship with your parents. So, of course, understanding your parent wounds and addressing those will also help your personal relationships. But in this area, what I really want us to focus on and what I think would be really helpful for you to understand is what it is that you need in these romantic and platonic relationships to feel safe. Really genuine, close friendships require vulnerability. And that means that we have to be willing to be hurt, right? And how we are able to do that to begin with, and then also handle pain, will affect our ability to connect with people around us. So, really understanding what do you need to feel safe in a romantic or platonic relationship? What do you need from somebody else? Is it affection? Is it reassurance? Is it quality time, right? And yes, we can get into maybe some like love language stuff. But I think it's also about your experience growing up and how your nervous system kind of has been shaped and what it is that it needs now to help you better develop those relationships. Your journaling prompt for this part of inner child healing will require a little bit more work if you don't already know your attachment style. If you don't know it, then go ahead and take an online quiz on attachment styles. There's quite a few. I will try to link the best one that I could find down below. But if you already know your attachment style, then you can just move on to the question, which is to reflect on, or the prompt, which is to reflect on how your relationship with your parents is connected to this. So, what is your attachment style? What was it about the way that your parents raised you that kind of shaped this? And then think about moments in your relationships, again, romantic or platonic, in which you felt that feeling of discomfort, whether that might have been fear, anxiety, or anger, like a really strong feeling, and see if you can connect that to any moments in your relationship with your parents that kind of connected. And then from there, you can start to ask yourself, okay, if that is a trigger for me that takes me to that very uncomfortable place, what do I need in that moment to help me feel more grounded and more at ease? And number five is to reconnect with your inner child. This is probably one of my favorite pieces and parts of inner child healing because this is where you really get to give yourself permission to play, to rest, to feel joy. Right? And the reason that this is so crucial is because the relationship that you have with yourself is ultimately going to be one of the most important relationships. So, how do you see yourself? How do you talk to yourself? Are you kind? Are you compassionate with your body, with your nervous system, with your soul when it's telling you that it's time to rest, when it's telling you that it doesn't feel safe and that something feels off? So, learning to reconnect with that part of you when it's talking to you, right? When it's telling you that it's needing something. And then, of course, also letting yourself play, right? So, getting a hobby, dancing, literally playing something, whether it's like a music or a game, really experiencing joy. So, your journal prompt for this part of inner child healing is to reflect on things that you enjoyed doing as a child. So, make a list of all the things that you enjoyed doing when you were a kid and try to figure out in what ways you're still allowing yourself to do it now. So, when you were a kid, did you go and play with your friends? Did you do a lot of painting? Did you play with instruments a lot? And are you allowing yourself to do that now? And if the answer is no, which is very likely because we don't tend to have a lot of time or opportunity to do that now as grown-ups, then the next part of this journal prompt will be to also ask yourself, how can I add more of that or infuse more of that into my daily life? Now, there is a lot more that I have for you in store throughout the year. I am planning on sharing more videos about each of these areas, so we'll be diving in a little bit deeper, maybe even following up on some of these journal prompts and touching back on some of the things that we're exploring. These are all, of course, journeys on their own, right? All five of these areas are huge areas, things that you can focus on for a really long time. But I hope that today's video kind of helped you name them and maybe even categorize them so that you can care for each of these areas throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your month, throughout your year, to help you in this journey, right? Of really ultimately helping you feel safer in the world, creating a safer relationship with yourself and with other people. I hope that you did find this video useful, that you felt that you've learned something, and that it's kind of either remotivated you or at least kickstarted your journey here in inner child healing. Now, I also have a lot of inner child healing videos. If you want to check those out, I'll link them in all the appropriate places for you. If you did feel that you learned something, please feel free to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and feel free to check me out on all socials and sign up for the newsletter if you want to stay in touch and get more content like this from me. Before we say goodbye, let's take a deep breath in together. A deep breath out. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one.